And welcome to episode 56 of the Jaguar Report podcast. My name's Gus Logue, joined by my co-host John Shipley. Happy Friday, John. How's your week been?
Hey, it's been good, man. Episode 56. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
It's been a good week, man. Jags are in London now. I didn't travel, so we're over here for the next 10 days before they get back. So it'll be interesting 10 days on this end, but
yeah,
we're living. We are living, my friend.
I feel like it's kind of a little bit of a mini bye for us because there was a lot of pressers at the stadium this week, but then next week, obviously, they'll be abroad. So it's going to be a lot of virtual work and not a lot of commuting for us. So it'll be a little bit nice.
Would you eat beans and toast?
Not together.
No.
Or at least not beans for breakfast. No, just no in general. I'm not a fan of. I don't even like biscuits and tea really.
You don't like biscuits? Toast. You've had biscuits and tea enough to know you don't like biscuits and tea?
I guess I've never had the English version, but I'm not a fan of tea in general.
According to my according to my extensive research, they do put the beans directly on the toast. I'm good at covering the game over here.
We're gonna need Deem or D-Rock to do a little London reporting for us.
That's a good idea. That's a good.
If Hughes gonna write about T-Swift, then they can write about beans on toast, right?
Yeah. So moving forward. So 1 and 2 start. They've said basically all week, even dating back to Sunday, that maybe going to an entirely different continent far away from here will actually, be a good thing. Will change the scenery, spark some energy. But in my opinion, even though we'll get into all of it, even though they're playing maybe the worst quarterback they're going to face all year, this is still a tough game. Drawing the Atlanta Falcons, and we'll get into it. But I could see this one going a lot of different ways.
Yeah, the way I think of the Falcons is we know that Balky likes for his team to be able to be big off of the bus, as he says. But that's what the Falcons are. They're big off the bus. Press Taylor, when he was asked about the Falcons, he just kept saying the word physical over and over again, and it applies on both sides of the ball. So I feel like that's kind of been what Trent has been building towards or shooting for, has been a big and physical team. So this will be a pretty good test for that image that he has.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And you literally just look at the Falcons last 3 drafts, and Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan are all complete unicorns at their positions, and they have them all on the same offense. Whether it's going well so far is completely a different story, but it's definitely even just looking at their defense, you mentioned Press, the guys they've invested in on defense this year. Obviously Calais, Bud Dupree, Jesse Bates. They've added a lot of different pieces to that unit. David Onyemata,
he's good.
Yeah, I probably butchered that. Yeah, he's been fantastic. So it's definitely a one that I think is going to be. I still think when the schedule came out, this probably looked like one of their easier games, and I'd say, despite record or whatever, the Falcons honestly have been better this year than I thought they'd be. Their defense has been better. I thought the offense was good. I'm not a Desmond Ridder guy. I was a proud watcher of AAC football for years. He's a quarterback. He's perfectly there.
Their defense has been better from the jump than I expected, especially because they have new pieces and they've got a new defensive coordinator that they brought over from New Orleans. But their offense has been a little bit underwhelming to me based on expectations, just because I didn't think Ridder was all of that, but I at least thought he was better than Marcus Mariota, and that's he hasn't really proved that yet. I feel like
no, not even a little. So you know what? Why don't we go ahead? We're talking about the new look defense. Jaguars offense versus Falcons defense. This definitely feels like a week a lot of people, are hoping it's, a bounce back week for the offense after, going against Houston last week and, 0 points in the first half. I feel like they matched up better with Houston, honestly. I think if you break down the Falcons' strengths on defense and their tendencies, I don't think this is a great matchup, for the Jaguars for a number of reasons. Like starting with Grady Jarrett has been, otherworldly this year. And regardless if it's Ben Barch or Tyler Shatley at left guard, I mean, Grady Jarrett's, a complete mismatch in the interior. And that's something the Jaguars have struggled with. They struggle with DeForest Buckner. They obviously struggled with not just Chris Jones, but also Mike Dana, George Karlaftis, when he's still inside. So there are already some signs there that, those interior game wreckers, like they kind of struggle with. And then you mentioned, David Onyemata too. Like they've been, in my opinion, like one of probably the top 5 interior duos in the NFL this year. Like that is the strength of their defense. So that's just like one aspect of it that I'm like, that's a tough one for me, like to be overly confident in. And you look at, what that does for their overall defense. Like they're one of the best, defenses in the league in terms of, rushing EPA per play, et cetera. They really sell out to stop the run, with the different fronts that they use. They're playing Calais Campbell on the edge. So like that kind of shows you, what their priorities kind of are. So it's already, in my opinion, going to be tough sledding in the running game. And then interior defensive line versus interior offensive line, I think that's a big advantage Falcons.
What was the last one you said?
I think their interior defensive line versus the Jags offensive line is a big advantage for Atlanta.
Yeah, you tweeted it earlier this week about how there's like never really an easy like defensive mismatch in the NFL because like every NFL team has at least one, if not 2, just really good guys on the defensive line. But the Jaguars like test up front certainly doesn't get easier this week with all those guys that you outlined. So like Travis Etienne talked about him a little bit on the Monday show or the Tuesday show, whichever we did this week, about how like his explosive play rate has gone down this year. And a big reason for that is just like there's less running lanes for him through the first 3 weeks of this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
Now this will really change. Like Travis Etienne's still really good and we'll probably get his, but it's definitely going to be a tough test for the Jaguars, like trying to get between the tackles. And you heard Press Taylor talk this week about, and like this week and other weeks too, about like how they try to like set a physical presence through the run game sometimes and like try to just get the offense going that way. But that's going to be like a lot easier said than done this week against the Falcons front. But even like their front 7 is pretty aggressive in the way that they play, especially with their defensive line. But their secondary is really aggressive too because they, like I said, their defensive coordinators from New Orleans, and the Saints defense is like their base is cover 2 man, which you don't really see that a lot in the NFL because it's just difficult to run cover 2 man at a high level. But the Falcons are doing a lot of split safety looks, so cover 2 and a lot of press man coverage. And so it's definitely a little bit of carryover from New Orleans. And I kind of think that their secondary is almost like the Jaguars is in a sense where they have like one really, really good corner, but not like he's not recognized as like an all-pro or anything like that yet. And then a really rangy free safety, even though Jesse Bates is a little bit better than Andre Sisco at that point. And then like some like nice pieces in the rest of the secondary, but not really any other dudes. It's mostly just one really good corner and a rangy safety. So AJ Terrell versus Calvin Ridley will obviously be a big matchup to watch for this week. I don't know if they ever overlapped in their time in Atlanta. I feel like maybe for 1 year they did.
Yeah.
But like AJ Terrell is an incredible cornerback. And then obviously it's like you got the revenge narrative game for Calvin on top of like whether he can bounce back from drops and false starts last week. So that'll be a huge matchup on the outside. And then we'll see like who between Kirk and Engram and I guess Agnew, since they had so many targets last year, and Zay Jones is going to be out again against the Falcons. Like which of those guys is able to step it up against a lot of man coverage, assuming like Calvin Ridley doesn't toast AJ Terrell, which no one should be predicting that.
Yeah, and then you'll have in the slot, I think the big matchup, because like you said, Falcons run a lot of man coverage. They run a lot of press coverage. They throw exotic blitzes out. So other than, them doing some more, too high and split safety looks than the Chiefs, and it's pretty similar to what the Chiefs, kind of showed. And The Jags receivers, I thought, struggled with the Chiefs press coverage, in week 2. So I'm interested to see, how their outside receivers play, especially with, Doug said earlier this week, Zay Jones, even though he traveled to London, is a long shot to play this week. So
I thought he was already ruled out. I didn't realize he's still, what is he, questionable technically?
Probably, I could see him being ruled out before the game starts. So it'd be a shot. Like the working assumption is that he's out. So backup receiver, obviously against
doubtful according to John Shipley.
Yeah, and then the big matchup I think is Christian Kirk and D. Alford in the slot. D. Alford he's been solid this year. He hasn't really been burned that many times, but I thought he had a nice outing, in week 3 against, Amon St. Brown and Detroit. He's not a bad slot corner by any means. So I think Kirk probably has to be a focal point of the passing game this week just because of the style of defense that the Falcons play. Like they're going to sell out to stop you on the outside, to disrupt the timing of routes at the line of scrimmage. And then I feel like we've said this like 5 podcast episodes in a row, but Evan Ingram week. It's Evan Ingram week. The Falcons have allowed, 18 catches, 157 yards, and 2 touchdowns to tight ends in 3 games this year. So there's precedence.
4th most catches for sure.
Yeah,
and I think probably top 10 in the other 2 also.
And they're coming off a game where they allowed 8 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown to the Lions tight ends. Sam Laporta had a big day against them. So
his 3rd career game, which is like he's been good for a rookie, but usually rookie tight ends don't produce early, so it's notable.
Exactly. And I don't know, like even with their usage of Ingram, they like to split him out wide a lot. Like he probably plays out wide like more than probably almost any other tight end in the NFL. But
yeah,
you can use those mismatches, even if you're not lining him up against their linebackers in their nickel guys as often. You want to try to get him on the outside, like at least use the mismatch. I really think that the offense this week has to funnel through Kirk and Ingram. So I'm interested to see if it actually happens, but if it doesn't, I don't know, man. I think it could be the potential for maybe the sloppiest offensive game of the season so far. I think it has that potential.
I think you're right in that, like, this is a pretty tough test on paper. Like, in the beginning of the week, I wasn't really thinking that much of it. And I was like, like, Falcons defense, like, how scary can they really be? But they match up, like, better than we definitely thought the Texans matched up against the Jaguars offense last week.
Yeah.
In terms of Ingram, though, the only names on the Falcons defense I don't recognize are their linebackers. They had 2nd-year linebacker Troy Anderson, sorry. He just went on IR. So they have Nate Landman and Kaden.
That's right.
Ellis sounds a little familiar, but like, do you know anything about them or?
No. I knew Troy Anderson was like a workout warrior who like was terrible at playing linebacker, and
yeah,
the fact that he was starting for them kind of said what had to be said.
I didn't even know like how he was doing so far in his career. I just knew the name like through the draft because he was taken in the 2nd or 3rd. But yeah, I think like getting Ingram matched up against those linebackers, and the Jags will try to get like Kirk and Ridley matched up against them too. Like the Ridley dropped a touchdown in the 1st quarter or the 1st drive of week 3. He was running a slot fade against a linebacker. So like we'll see like different types of receivers like ETN too, try to get matched up against like the worst coverage defenders for the Falcons, but it would certainly make the most sense for it to be Ingram more than anyone.
I'm glad you mentioned ETN because like his usage in the passing game has been a bit more than I expected so far. I mean, he's been targeted, 13 times through 3 games, 11 catches, 79 yards. And a lot of that has been screens. And you didn't see that much last year. Like you saw, screens here and there. But it really seems like, they've – like I had a question to mailbag this week. It was like, what can the play calling do to mitigate, the offensive line? I'm like, they're already doing it. He already has one of the fastest time to throws and like a mid to like lower end average depth of target. So they're already getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and they're getting ETN involved, in the screen game more. So I agree with you. I think nobody act on fantasy at all ever on anything I ever say. If you ever do, I don't take any blame, credit, anything. But I think ETN, while he won't have much rushing production this week, I could see him have like a 60 like receiving yard type day.
Dang, we are on the same wavelength because one of my predictions for later in the show is ETN over 18.5 receiving yards. And I had like a lot of the same info you had. The Jags were 10th in running back screen attempts last year. And this year, just through 3 weeks, so small sample size. But this year, they're tied for second in running back screen attempts. ETN's catches per game has gone up from 2.1 catches per game last year to 3.7 this year. And then his receiving yards per game has gone up from 18.6 last year to 26.3 this year. And then on like with the time to throw thing, I'm pretty sure I saw that Trevor has like the fastest release time in the league than anyone except for Joe Burrow. But like Joe Burrow has his like calf injury and is clearly not playing like the way he usually plays. So
he's not playing football.
Yeah. So like Trevor is essentially throwing, like getting rid of the ball faster than anyone, or at least any healthy quarterback in the league. And then like I feel like we saw a little bit more success with the screen calls last year than this year, because I can like just off the top of my head remember a couple ETN screens that went for big plays last year, but none really come to mind this year. So whether it's screens or just like getting the ball out to him as like the third or fourth read, because I do think that that's part of the reason his like receiving production has increased from year to year, is just that like he's getting some of JaMychal Hasty's old snaps.
Yeah.
But either way, like I agree with you where I think ETN might have a tough day between the tackles, even though he has looked impressive in that regard. But I would expect a lot more damage from him through the air this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. And honestly, like Press Taylor, alluded to this yesterday, but I feel like if there's one aspect of Lawrence's game that he could improve on so far this year, like we talked about it earlier this week, I think he's been, good to great this year. Anyways, like if you just like singling out his individual performance, but there's one area he can be better in. It's, maybe holding a tick longer, in the pocket and not releasing it, as quickly, like you said, but that also, it compounds with the offensive line issues. I think it's obvious that the offensive line and the pressure is kind of impacting how he plays and his decision-making. So I'm interested to see that this week, because Lawrence is better when he, can push, the ball, to all levels of the field, and he's not just, playing point guard. He obviously can be a hyper-efficient, point guard, and he can be like any type of quarterback you need him to be, but it feels like it restricts him, in his traits more than anything. So I'm interested to see this week, can they hold up enough in, pass protection to let him be that quarterback?
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see if they try to call more running back screens or just screens in general, even though they do rank second in the league so far. And they do like run a ton of those RPO type screens that are just out to the boundary, but like what else they try to mitigate the pass rush. I agree with you. I feel like play action could be a decent one because I'm going off the top of my head. I looked at the stat a couple of days ago. I think Lawrence is 16th in the league in dropback rate with play action, but he's like second in PFF grade, or no, fourth in PFF grade, fourth in adjusted completion percentage, which removes drops. And he was second in like big time throws or something like that.
Yeah.
So, as you said, he's like good at anything, but like play action, they have tried it, and like their play action hasn't been extremely successful so far this season. And so it'll be interesting to see like if they try to like maybe try out a few different designs and like just try some different things. But he's so good at the like rollouts. He makes it look so easy. Like last week, he had one where there was like a free rusher coming off the edge off of a bootleg. And like, I feel like any normal quarterback, or at least if I was playing quarterback, I would have like eaten the sack or like try to scramble out of it. But Trevor, like because of his frame, he was able to throw over him, and like he like did like a spin move to like avoid getting hit. So it was like a 360 like no scope almost. It was like he makes like even that kind of stuff like look super easy. But I also have Trevor's stats that show that he's still like that guy, because so I was like, there was some people saying like, oh, Stroud had a better performance, which maybe he had a better week 3 performance, but he's not the better quarterback today. and I'm not seeing like a lot of blame going on Trevor Lawrence, but I just want to make sure that we all know that he remains an elite quarterback. So last year after the Broncos game in London, so from weeks 9 to 18, Lawrence was second in PFF passing grade, fourth in big time throw rate, 15th in turnover worthy play rate, and his receivers were 31st in drop rate. So like one of the worst. Through 3 weeks this year, Trevor is second in passing grade, third in big time throw rate, ninth in turnover worthy play rate, and his receivers are even worse at dropping the ball. Like even the interception, the one play that I was gonna say from last week that was like an objectively bad decision or bad throw from Lawrence was the interception. Even watching that back, like maybe I'm just Trevor Lawrence build, but like Agnew kind of like slowed down his break. He like was running a dig over the middle of the field and he just like slowed down. So if he was like running the route at full speed, how he should have the whole time, then like Lawrence's window would have been like a little bit farther past the linebacker than it was. So like I'm sure you can blame Trevor for the interception if you wanted to. And like he can hold on to the ball a couple of times a game a little bit more. But like when I watch the film, I don't know what else he can do. Like there's not a lot of plays where I'm like, oh, he should have done this instead. I can't see that on film.
Yeah, they're really, aren't a lot. Like it just the simple fact of the matter is, regardless if people want to hear it or not, he's playing well and
he's playing out of his mind, John. He's so good.
Yeah. And until the offense looks better, though, it's going to be I'm not crazy. You're crazy.
Like, until the offense overall looks better, then it'll look like he's playing okay instead of like I'm telling you, he's playing really well right now.
Like Ben Solak with the Ringer, great writer, great guy, had a really good article laying out the Jags, issues. But you go to the replies of it because in his tweet, he was like, yeah, Jaguars will be fine because Trevor Lawrence is good. And everybody, like half the replies are like, is he good? Like he's not playing like it. I'm like, watch the games.
That's what I'm saying. There was this, I don't know who it is, but for NFL.com, someone does like a quarterback index. And their rankings were like, they had Purdy at 8.
Your reaction to that.
Purdy at 8, Cousins at 9, Goff at 10, Lawrence at 11. I was like, what is this? Like, if I wanted to know the most productive quarterbacks, then I could look up just like who's leading the league in touchdown passes or passing yards this season. But like, come on. Like Brock Purdy, come on. Like Goff and Cousins have had solid years. I'll give them that. Even Purdy has had a solid year, but come on, watch the games.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, guy. So we're going to go ahead and go to break before you fly off the handle and throw out anything you can't take back. We'll come back and preview the Jaguars defense and Falcons offense. All right, Jaguars defense, Falcons offense. Like you have to look at the matchup. You have to start off with Desmond Mitter. Mid's probably strong. Okay, I've been bashing you for Damian Pierce a bit. Like while his season has been objectively horrific, a lot of it is because their offensive line's been bad. Desmond Ritter's just to me bad. Like I can't believe that more people fell for it. Like analysts and stuff. Like this guy can be sneaky good. Like, no, he obviously is, just a guy more or less. But how did an NFL team go into a season with expectations and like Desmond Ritter's our quarterback? Like, there are other avenues you can take, man. Like, but I said the same thing last year. How do you go into an NFL season as a serious franchise with Marcus Mariota as your starter? So it's been kind of their MO the last 2 seasons.
I don't know. It's weird I don't know what. Because at first I'm like, maybe they're like front offices just like thinking ahead and they're like, we're going to build the team and then we're going to get a quarterback rather than like getting our guy onto like just like a terrible roster. But that's that plan is so much easier said than done because you can't really like decide when good quarterbacks are going to be available to you and when they're not. So like, I don't know. I was willing to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because obviously Ritter wasn't good last year. in the little time that he played. But I was like, maybe like with a full NFL offseason, like maybe in like a scheme that is not as quarterback friendly as like a Shanahan scheme might be, but is still definitely one of the more quarterback friendly schemes that like kind of hides your quarterback. So I was like, maybe I didn't think he was going to be good. I was like, maybe he's not going to be bad though. Again, like maybe he's just going to be better than Marcus Mariota. But so far, that hasn't really like worked out for the Falcons. Ritter leads the league in both total turnover worthy plays and rate of turnover worthy plays, and like has a bunch of like misses downfield. Like all the fantasy managers always get mad seeing clips of like a wide open Kyle Pitts running downfield, and
Poor
like
Pitts, man.
The ball is like 5 yards downfield, but like the same thing is happening this year. Nothing's changed. Literally just last week against the Lions that happened. That'll probably happen against the Kyle Pitts will get like a deep target this week, and it's just a matter of whether the Jags let it up or if Ritter overthrows him. So yeah, he's pretty mid.
Pitts is really about to go into his 4th season with like only a handful of games with a good quarterback throwing to him, bro. That is insane. Like he people kill him online. Like people like legitimately saying maybe he's just not very good. No, he's terrific, man. He is awesome. They had like one of the worst quarterback situations in the league since he got drafted.
I think he's like easily the best player I've seen from Florida in the past 10 years. He's
well.
I should have known. I was walking myself into that. Touche, but
you're not wrong, but
he's so freaking good. Like,
yeah, to me, it's him.
Like, anyone who looks at the stats for Lawrence and like goes based on that to rate him, it's like the same thing with Pitts. Like, don't go based on the stats. Like, he's a freak. He's so good.
Yeah, to me, it's him, Tease Tabor, Will Grier, CJ Henderson. Do you guys still count Will Grier?
Yeah, it's been long enough that like it's like, oh, he put on a Gator uniform, so
yeah.
And like it's not like he's like good in the league, so like no one really cares if we claim him. I feel like.
Yeah, he put on a Gator uniform.
But like obviously, like I'll say like Cam Newton as a Gator, like as a bit sometimes, and that'll rile people up. That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just my Auburn fan friend that it riles up, but
no, it almost riled me up, and I knew you were completely accurate. I mean, so like if the Jaguars are gonna like win a game based on a quarterback being bad, like that has to be this week because like Ritter will give them chances to generate turnovers. Like he is both late and inaccurate over the middle. Like frequently, you know, he is legitimately bad throwing in the intermediate part of the field. So even though they're missing Devin Lloyd, who like one of his biggest pluses is just in zone defenses, like he can make it sometimes hard to throw over him just because of his length. Chad Moon was kind of the opposite. So I think that kind of hurts a little bit. Like I feel like Lloyd would have been valuable against, you know, a quarterback like Ritter who was already bad over the middle. But the chances for turnover worthy plays like will be there, and they have to take advantage of it. So Gus, are you ready? You ready to get bulky ball?
I'm as ready as I ever will be.
Okay. You sure? Okay. Tell me that Trent Baalke isn't taking advantage of market inefficiencies. Some teams, like the Falcons, are taking running backs in the first round who are scoring 1 touchdown per every 147 touches, while Baalke is waiting 2 rounds later and getting a guy who scores a touchdown every 18.5 touches. You just got Baalke ball. Market inefficiency.
Worth responding to. First of all, what round was Travis Etienne taken in, and who is
doesn't count? Doesn't count. Urban Meyer.
How many touches does Tank even have? Like, holy cow! Does Cordero Patterson have the same number of touches?
So he's being criticized for taking the more efficient player who's scoring on more touchdowns per touches. I don't think that's very fair of you. You've been masterclass.
Yeah. Tank Bigsby's better than Bijan Robinson. That's a good segment.
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say he's – I can't say it with a straight face. Market inefficiencies, Gus. Market inefficiencies.
Yeah.
Ignore the fact that he's a backup.
He's trying to take advantage of market inefficiencies by getting 3 linebackers like in just the 2 previous off seasons before. And like this would be the team for those linebackers to do something with this like physical ground and pound Atlanta offense. So like the way I put it for the Falcons running game is I'm not scared of Tyler Algier, even though he is a good running back. Just because like the strength of the Jaguars defense is like their run defense. I forget which one's 2 and which one's 3, but they're definitely top 3 in both expected points added per play and success rate allowed on rush attempts this year as a defense. So they've been really good. And it was funny. I saw Mia asked Roy Robertson Harris on Wednesday, like, what do you need to do to like generate more sacks? And he said, stop the run, we'll have more fun. Like stopping the run will set up sacks. But then after that, she was like, haven't you been pretty good against the run so far? He's like, we've been okay, but we know our standard and we got to play up to that. So I just think that's encouraging to hear that like they're, by any metric that you use, they're a top 10 run defense, and that they like, don't think that's good enough. So I think that's, I don't know, inspiring to hear. But like their run defense is especially good between the tackles, where Tyler Algier does most of the work. On the other hand, Bijan Robinson, who is shouldn't even be in the same
talented
league.
Yet inefficient. Go ahead.
Be in the same league as Tank Bigsby. He does a ton of his work outside of tackles on run plays, because he has like maybe the highest rate in the league of any running back in terms of like running outside instead of inside. But he also he's the only Falcons player with more than 10 receptions on the season. And I think he's tied with Pitts for targets. So he's used a decent amount in the passing game. So like Tyler Algier, again, not super worried about him, even though it is a good player behind a good offensive line and a good system. But like Bijan Robinson out in space, that could be trouble. The Jags their defense ranks 6th worst in missed tackles this year, and they had the same ranking last year. And that doesn't even include the fullback touchdown last week.
In maybe like a hot take, but I already think Bijan is legit the 3rd best player in the NFL with the ball in his hands. I think it goes Lamar Jackson, Deebo Samuel, Bijan.
Ooh, I like that take, because like running backs, I feel like he's probably top 3. Yeah. And like that's not even a hot take, but I like with the ball in his hand, that's pretty good. Yeah. Deebo was the first one that came to mind for me. I'm trying to think if there's any others.
Like when you take a running back that high, like Bijan is what it's supposed to look like. You know, I have zero interest in getting into arguments on the merits of taking him there, because it just to me is not an interesting conversation. Like he's legitimately already an elite player, and the Lions were able to limit him some because they literally like stacked the box because they dared Ritter to beat them, and he literally couldn't. So I feel like that's probably what you see the Jaguars do this. I mean, it's kind of what they did last week against Houston.
The Jags rank 1st in usage of stacked boxes this season as a defense.
That doesn't surprise me.
So like, yeah, it doesn't. Same here. So like they're 100% going to stack the box, try to take away Algier, try to take away Bijan, and dare Risman to beat them. That's exactly what I wrote down a couple of days ago for an article. Just dare Raider beat them.
Do you know their success rate with stacked boxes?
No, I can find it though.
Yeah, because that you saw that a lot against Houston, and like it does have a tendency, like it can be risk reward, because if you do have a hiccup in coverage, like at all, like a miscommunication, then Jesus, everybody's in the box wide open, and I think Desmond Ridder can maybe hit a wide open receiver.
I don't like. We saw Stroud take advantage of a couple like loaded boxes last week, but like. About it. CJ Stroud looks so good. Like not like a top 5 quarterback or anything like that, like immediately, but like I would say he's like top 12 in the league like today. Yeah. But let's see, where is it? So the Jags are 1st in usage of stacked box, 34%, 64 total snaps. They rank 19th in success rate, 42%. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't bode well.
I just saw some on my phone. Zay Jones has been ruled out, according to Rock. So,
and Jamal Agnew is a game time decision, but Doug Peterson thinks that he'll go. I don't know, man. The more we keep talking about this, the more I'm thinking this might be not a great matchup for them, honestly.
Yeah. Again, like Kyle Pitts is gonna get like a deep target where he was wide open because like the Jags are setting the house on a like Ritter blitz, and then it's just a matter of whether Ritter's gonna be able to complete it. We haven't talked about Drake London. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Drake London, like same. I think Drake London, like he's gonna get a lot of one-on-one opportunities, especially downfield, and like I think Tyson matches up with him, but I think like just this is maybe unfair, but literally just looking at Drake London's frame and looking at Darius Williams' frame, like the Jaguars shouldn't allow them to line up against each other.
That's the real problem, is that like the Falcons also have Mac Hollins, who's like even bigger and stronger than Drake London. So like I think Tyson Campbell will fare well with whoever he's matched up against, because I mean Mac Hollins isn't like a great receiving talent, even if he's a good football player. And then like just because he like is usually a little bit better against the bigger guys, even though London is like quick for his size, it's a little bit of a better matchup for Tyson this week. But I'm worried about Darius Williams, because not anything based on like his specific play or like effort level or anything like that, but we saw last year sometimes like the Titans specifically, I remember, were like sending Henry out to the edge wherever Darius Williams was. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if like part of the Falcons game plan is like, let's run at Darius Williams.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to be probably like the guy with the bullseye on his back. And I guess the way to kind of maybe help mitigate that is, the pass rush coming alive. Do you think there's any potential for that, to happen this week? I mean, it's tough to say you like the matchup when you should have liked the matchup last week and nothing came out of it. But, I mean, just how do you see Jaguars pass rush versus the Falcons offensive line?
Well, I think a lot of it will come down to situational football, because like Roy was saying earlier in the week, like if you stop the run earlier and like set up third and longs as opposed to third and mediums, then it's a lot easier to generate a pass rush. So like the Jags will need to like kind of help themselves out a little bit in that regard. I don't have a lot of hope for the interior or the outside rush, just based on what we've seen from Trayvon Walker this season and Caleb Vaughn and like the rest of the depth. But like Josh Allen has been a one-man show. But I think like my hot take for this week is that Roy Robertson Harris leads the league or leads the team in pressures or sacks, whatever you want to say, because he's going to be matched up a lot against Matthew Bergeron, who's the second-round rookie out of Syracuse and has been struggling so far for the Falcons. And he's definitely like he's got the target on the bullseye on his back for the Falcons offense if Williams has it for the Jags defense, just because the rest of the Falcons offensive line is I don't know if they have any like elite guys, but like the rest of their line is just very good. But Bergeron, I feel like, is a little bit of a weak link, and he's going to be matched up against Roy a lot. And you and I have both said like Roy has been one of the better defenders and maybe one of the more underrated players on the team in general so far this season. So I think it's going to be a big Roy Robertson Harris week, or just interior pass rush week.
Man, it'd be a good week to have a versatile defensive lineman who could slide inside and be a mismatch against guards. Too bad they don't do that.
I wonder just to give them the benefit of the doubt, like I wonder if they're not doing that because of what their edge like depth looks like.
Yeah, I think that's why they're not doing it, but
like Chaseon's on the field anyways. So that like just if so the reps where they have Trayvon outside and Chaseon inside, that's two players who shouldn't be where they're at. If you at least like switch them and you have Trayvon inside, Chaseon outside, at least one player has a chance to like I think this should be a perfect week for Trayvon to play inside, because like you said, Bergeron has struggled. I personally believe any player who gets a sack against him should sing "Oh Canada," on the field over his over his person. And like Chris Lindstrom has allowed like 4 to 5 sacks already this year, I think, like a right guard. So this should be a week like Like to me, like let Trayvon get those mismatches inside and let him produce. But I'm with you. I think their lack of edge depth is why they're not doing it, which again, something everybody and anybody pointed out, for months and 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 months.
For Trayvon going inside, it's just frustrating that they're like not trying it out at all. He has 2 total snaps, like with his hand in the dirt inside of the offensive tackle so far this season. And we're not even asking for it to be like above 50%, just like make it like 10% of the snaps and just like try it a little bit more.
5% would be a start.
Yeah, but like 2 snaps so far. He's played like the 8th most snaps of any defender as an edge rusher.
Like in the NFL?
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's like at one point, are they gonna like?
That's crazy.
Be forced to give up on that experiment.
They're not like that. It's just not. It's not going to happen. It genuinely does not seem like it's going to happen really at any point. So I'd like if you're going to do it like this, like last week should have been a week to do it, obviously, but like this week even more so. But I don't think it happens. Like I guess my hot take is for this week is you see the Falcons have, success on the ground. Like I'm trying to formulate this without me sounding like an idiot. I'll just go ahead and say it. Falcons 200 total yards, 200 of those come on the ground.
Ooh,
only throwing 400. Yeah, I just think like Bijan on the outside, like up the middle. I think Jaguars advantage, but I just think he has the athleticism to make them struggle on the outside and can break off a couple runs. So
that's exactly why Trayvon's going to be lined on the edge for every single snap on 1st and 2nd down, without a doubt. Is because like he and Josh are setting the edge against Bijan. That's going to be massive.
Yeah, 100%. So, Gus, you got anything else for us before we head into our break and predictions?
No, I can save it for that.
Okay. All right, Gus. Let's have it. Let's hear your locks, bet the mortgages of the week. I want everybody to put your child's college fund, your any investment holdings that you have on anything that comes out of Gus Logue's mouth. Gus, let's hear it. What are your locks of the week? I'm
gonna have to decide which one is gonna be the lock of the week because I forgot you wanted to start doing that. I mostly just like the over receiving yards for both of the running backs, over 18.5 for ETN, over 25.5 for Bijan. I just think that for both of them, the inside of the opposing defense matches up against their respective offenses, and so they're going to be able to do a little bit more damage out in space. And that's just not that either of them can't do damage inside the tackles, but they're both the kind of backs that do more damage outside anyway. But I think they get an especially good matchup this week. So I like both starting running backs to go over receiving yards.
Come on.
All right. The lock of the week is Calvin Ridley over 63 receiving yards. I'm doing it for one more week. I said I was going to stop, and I know he's got a tough matchup. I just can't quit talent. Trevor has looked unbelievably good this year and has barely made any mistakes. The consistency he's shown has been mind-boggling to me.
Well,
really,
we spent 20 minutes talking about how it's a bad matchup.
I just can't quit the talent, man.
You can't. You're sick.
I'll shut up for the rest of the season.
You're a sick puppy.
If Ridley doesn't hit this over, but I'm going back to the well one more time.
You're one sick puppy.
Revenge.
Yeah. I got Travis Etienne 16.5 rush attempts under. I think there's going to be like Kansas City where he got 12 carries. They're that's the one thing I will give Doug Peterson and the Jags. When they know the run game isn't there, they normally don't even bother. They'll very quickly be like, okay, we're not gonna run just for the sake of running. Like I think so.
The opposite of Arthur Smith too. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're running no matter what.
Exactly. Trevor Lawrence, 33.5 pass attempts over. I think you're gonna see him throw it like 40 times. Honestly, probably.
That one.
Evan Ingram, 46.5 receiving yards. Lock of the week. Over.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was deciding. I was trying to decide between like Kirk or Ingram because I feel like one of them is gonna have like 100-yard game, and the other one's gonna have like a solid 50-yard game. I'm with you that I like lean Ingram, but
yeah,
I don't know. Like, I don't feel confident enough, I guess. So I'm not confident enough in either one of them to make a pick. So I'm just going Ridley again. All right, my hot takes are Roy Robertson Harris leads the team in pressures this week. Oh, actually, I had Evan Ingram leads the team in yards written down. So I'll just have that as a hot take instead of like a props prediction.
Okay, my hot take. Otherwise, Trey Herndon, interception and a tackle for loss. Write it down. Write it down, Gus. Write it. If we can write down 40-10 prediction, we can write this down.
Oh, too soon.
Yeah.
An interception and TFL.
Did you see like the comment on the last episode we did? He was like, John looks giddy at the start of the episode to talk about Gus's prediction.
No, as I was coming out of my mouth last week, I was like, this is the worst idea ever.
I want everybody to know that literally, like, as the final like whistle blew and the clock hit 0, the first thing I did was pack up my bag, scoot out of my seat, look at Gus, and remind him of that prediction. It was yeah. So Gus, you got a score prediction for us this week?
I'm gonna go 21-20 Jaguars.
So I went on 10-10 yesterday and said Jaguars win a slop fest, but we literally have talked myself out of it here. I'm going 2017 Falcons.
So we both like Falcons to cover, and you like Falcons outright. The spread is -3 last I saw in the Jags' favor. Yeah, I do not. I don't have the confidence for like the Jags to cover any spread until they do. Until I see it. I
think the Jags are a better and more talented team than the Falcons.
Right.
I just think this is legitimately a bad matchup for their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I like agree with both of those, but then like the thing that brings me over the top to have like the Falcons lose barely rather than the Jaguars lose barely is just the quarterbacks. It's one of the best, one of the worst. Like eventually that's got to matter.
That's fair. Can I count on you?
Yeah.
The Jaguars lost games last year. The Carson Wentz, Daniel Jones.
Okay.
Russell Wilson.
One with Doug as head coach.
Russell Wilson.
Christian Kirk got tagged at the 1-yard line as time expired.
That's not why they lost that game. Come on. They lost to Jared Goff.
Okay, well, so far only Jared Goff. Only that game happened after the Broncos-London game.
CJ Stroud is better than Jared Goff. That's my next hot take. Like, I would take CJ Stroud to win a game tomorrow than Jared Goff.
I like that take, and I agree with you. That said, like, Goff has looked pretty solid this year.
One of my best friends is a Lions fan, and him and I go back and forth on Jared Goff, probably on the daily. So I wanted to make sure I get that one.
Bryce or someone else?
No, it's one of my best friends from like a childhood section.
Yeah. Well, they look good, dude. I thought the Packers were gonna get the win last night.
Packers got bullied.
Yeah. Lions look good.
The Jaguars lose in London. They're 1-3, and the Lions are 3-1. Are the Lions like the team that the Jags, were supposed to be?
Yeah, the Athletic had an article, or they had a bunch of articles like comparing two teams before the season, and it was like these two teams are at like similar, like just points in their franchise building, and like which one would you rather be? So it was Jaguars versus Lions for the Athletics preseason thing.
I have no interest in rehashing the Aiden Hutchinson thing. I already made the mistake of tweeting about it this morning. I deeply regret it already. But if the Jaguars lose in London and Walker doesn't do anything as a pass rusher, that noise is going to be loud. Yeah.
Trent Baalke had a really good day 2 in 2021.
They did.
Like, that's all I'm saying.
Well said. Well said, Gus. You got masterclass. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. We will be back Monday to review Jaguars Falcons. Otherwise, I'm John Shipley. Gus, have a good one.
You too, brother.